we continued, I believe, Mr. Rubens. So we've got some speaker cards. I'd like to keep folks to about 2 minutes, maybe a little bit over maybe, but I'd like to keep their comments there. We've had a lot of comments already last time. So start with Bill Harkala.
Good evening. I'm Bill Harcola, long-term San Carlos resident, and I had a lot to say, but after all this, I just kind of distill this down quickly. I have to completely disagree with Al in regards to solar studies. I myself have been hammered by a house next door to me. I've lost all my winter sun. I spent $300,000 because I live on a corner property, and my rear yard is exposed to the side yard of now house that added 1321 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house on a remodel on the second floor. It's an outrage. Besides, I lost all my privacy to boot. And I have to further say that I've been to many of these meetings and hearings, and planning staff has proven to me that they're not in favor of decreasing massing standards and have fought this solar study, daylight plane thing from the beginning. They have reluctantly conceded little by little, but still won't align closer with neighboring communities. They've come up with well-rehearsed rationales for each reduction, but not once have I heard an argument that being in line with the neighboring communities is not in the best interest of San Carlos. And that's a real question that you all have to really be able to answer to me and the rest of the San Carlos residents. And if you don't have an answer to that, you really can't vote to adopt the Planning Commission's recommendations, because they have been seriously, and in my opinion, jaded by planning staff's recommendations, as well as you've been listening to all this stuff. And, you know, they have gifted ways of presenting tons of data, and it's tough to really conceptualize. But all you have to do is go around and look at these houses. And they used to have these models of all these houses boxed next to each other, 2-story houses. There's no landscape in between them. Just visualize San Carlos with all 2-story houses. This is the future of this city. This is a huge vote for our future. Please don't sell us out. Make a legacy statement to reject the Planning Commission's staff influence recommendations with a vote to adopt good growth San Carlos limits with standards more in line with other peninsula cities. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments, sir. Susan Tatum.
Hello, I'm a San Carlos resident since the mid-'80s, and I live in one of those small 1-story houses. Right next to me is a huge 5,000 square foot or close to it house that was built some years back over my protests. 2 doors down is a spec house that's being built that's also 2 stories and takes up as much of the lot as is available to be built upon under current standards. And in between those 2 enormous houses are 2 pretty much original 1-story houses that look as out of place as our train station now does. And I am very concerned about that. I would like us to have the same or very similar FAR numbers as communities that are like us, Menlo Park, Belmont. The last thing I saw showed that for a medium-sized lot in San Carlos, the FAR was about the same. But if you have a small lot or a very big lot, it was way up. And so I just don't understand that. I don't see why any of them have to be more than 50%. But that's my suggestion, and I like the smaller feel. I don't like houses that are maxing out the lots. They're not pretty. They're not architecturally attractive or significant, and they are infringing on the privacy and sunlight of everybody who already lives here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sarah Timby.
Sarah Timby. I've been a resident for a long time in San Carlos. Excuse me. I think the Planning Commission suggestions are poor for many of the reasons you've just heard. There's several things that, besides what has been mentioned, though, that I'd like to bring out, and that is that if you just have the 5 feet on either side, you often are losing trees. And I think trees in San Carlos have been something that should be protected. We have a heritage tree idea of saving old trees. And I know in my area on Knoll Drive, there have been 2 spec houses and 1 other house where, and also city property on the edge of the road where heritage trees have been destroyed for those houses. So I'm very unhappy about that. I'd like to see the small lots. I'd like the floor area ratios for the small lots to stay low, because as you've just heard, the neighbors of those lots are severely impacted. The larger lots, as the Good Growth San Carlos suggests, could have it. I like the way that's been suggested, that they have up to 6,000. They could have, I think, 50% floor area ratio, and then after that it would go down a bit, depending on lot size. And yeah, so it would be 53%, I think, floor area ratio on the smaller lots, and 30% after that. I think that would be a very good way of handling some of these problems. And as a general statement in support of smaller home sizes, I know you want to protect property owners of their house and their ability to build, but I think it's just as important to protect the neighbors and the community, to be part of it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Tom Hoskin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Tom Hoskin. I'm a resident for 19 years. I don't have a particular dog in this fight. I'm not remodeling, probably won't be remodeling anytime soon. And my neighbors have already done their remodeling, so I'm not here about any particular issue like that. I want to thank you for taking your time with this. It's a very arcane issue, pretty dry topic, so I appreciate your taking time to think it through very carefully. I sent each of you emails, and I met with you in the past, going back up to 2 years ago. So I just want to repeat what I said in the emails and in the past, that I think we should have a FAR that's more in line with the neighboring communities and what Good Growth San Carlos has advocated. So more strong than what the Planning Commission recommended, particularly at the very low and the very high housing sizes. I think that the form-based approach, in theory, it sounds really interesting, and maybe for commercial zoning, maybe it's good. I'm not knowledgeable enough about that. But after 3 presentations, it's still complicated to me. And I don't know that they've ever shown, at least it was never evident to me, that they actually addressed house sizes. And the FARs could actually go up to the high 70%. Also, I've seen the statements by the new city council candidates. I realize that they're not voting in this vote tonight, but they have made statements that are supportive of, I think, my views on that, and some of them very explicitly. One of them was on the shack, in fact, and I think are supportive of that view. And so finally, I just want to say that in 2011, whenever it was, the rules were relaxed. I'm not sure that it was ever really thought through very well. So I hope that you take the time to really think it through this time, that you adopt something that's more in line with the neighboring cities and Good Growth San Carlos. And one other thing I'd like to say about Chuck Galuli's talk, which I think was very good, is very interesting, and that is that also affecting the home prices, the price per square foot, and the number of bidders that you get is the character of the town, including the schools, including just the look and feel of the town. And that's also a very big factor in this. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Linda Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Linda Ferreira. I've had 2 homes in San Carlos. So my current home I've been in for 22 years. I've lived the last 8 years in constant fear of what neighbors on either side of me are going to do with their homes. I don't have a dog in the show either, other than living in constant fear. Fortunately, so far nothing dramatic has happened. But I want to say that hundreds of people have been to these meetings over the last 2 years, including myself, and all of them have been not in favor of the Planning Commission's recommendations. And then one person showed up at the very last study session and said, oh, I have this small lot and I want to build a big house on it that won't fit any of this. And it completely turned the two of the 3 new commissioners in reverse, and had them all of a sudden decide that they didn't want to go along with the program that all the citizens wanted, even though they hadn't actually heard much of what the citizens wanted other than one study session, which I find just really not acceptable. Despite the repeated and consistent input from a variety of city members and homeowners, including architects and other professional people that have tons of experience with this situation, the planning department keeps putting forth this information that you guys have all seen, and it's just been really kind of frightening that they came up with this form-based idea. I don't know where the consultant came up with this, but it's only been used in one city, and I think it was Petaluma. It hasn't really been tried, and many experts came and said that it's not a good idea. It has a lot of empty space. It needs halls that are empty, useless space, and it won't support the 2020 state-mandated requirement to have solar panels available for everyone on the roofs, because the state's moving towards that. They want people to stop using electricity and gas for heating, and that's just been ignored. When I left the last Planning Commission study session at 10 o'clock, because I hadn't eaten yet and I was starving and I had to go home, they were 3 of the 5 commissioners were in favor of 53% FAR and having a licensed architect on the shack, giving the shack authority to make decisions, and going along with the Good Growth recommendations. And when I got home and I read Good Growth summary the next day, I was shocked, absolutely shocked, to find out that the Planning Commission would completely turned around and was now recommending going with the plan they presented to you. And as far as Mr. Johnson's question about house size affecting price, of course house sizing affects price. But what about the neighbor's house price? So you build this big McMansion that covers the entire lot, blocks the sun and the light from the neighbor's house, and so what happens to the neighbor's house price? It goes down.
Could you wrap it up, please?
And the survey about Al Savoy's thing about the light plan, you said you don't sound like you're in favor of it. He hasn't been in favor of it since day one. He has done everything he can possibly do to fight having to address the light plan. And if you don't have light and air and circulation around your house, would you want to live in your house? We had one man who came here and said his wife actually left him and moved someplace else because their house is so dank and dreary and depressing, she won't live there. And
Ma'am, I'm sorry, we're already like 4 minutes over, so do you have
Okay.
any final thought?
no, I just think that this is nowhere near ready to be voted on, and I think it really needs to have some more thought put into this because it is not what San Carlos needs. This is the city of good living, not of McMansions.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. for
Sure,
consideration.
sure. Julia Orazem?
Yes, I live on, I'm fortunate, I live on Eaton Avenue. I have a big lot. But I own 2 houses in San Carlos, 1 house in Redwood City, and 4 undeveloped lots up in the hills in Redwood City. So I'm very fortunate. I've worked hard, I've saved, I've been frugal, and I kept all my property. So to my children's benefit. But anyway, we bought our house on Eaton Avenue 2011, and there were already plans approved for an addition, a remodel next to us. The house next to us, I was never able to find out until very late in the process exactly where the property line was. Turns out the property line is 19 inches from the back corner of their garage. The front corner 22 inches from the property line. They tore their garage down completely, and in the process, during this time, my husband passed away. It was a complete nightmare. But I said, wait a minute, what are we doing here? You can't put that garage up the way it was. It's not, it has to go back to the setback that's in the city law. So anyway, it was a big mess. And so ultimately the Planning Commission said, sorry, we've already told them they can do it. Even though all the walls are down, we've already told them that they can put the garage up, but it has to be exactly the way it was. Well, it ended up not being exactly the way it was. It ended up being 14 inches higher, which doesn't sound like a great deal, but because there was so little space between the houses, we lost all the sunlight on the roof of our garage. Again, they're west of us. And so their 6,000 square foot, 6-bedroom, I think it's 4-bath house next to us has ended up encroaching all the way around. Apparently there was a second set of plans that was supposed to go out to neighbors. I never got it. We didn't realize what was happening. And so we now have lost their master bathroom window looks directly into our dining room, and they have an enormous deck on the back of the house that looks directly into our backyard. We lost all of our privacy in our backyard. So what could be done? Well, I was supposed to get a fence between the properties to just delineate where my portion of the side yard area, which is what's in contention. And this was a provision. This was a requirement of them allowing the property owner to go forward. The property owner never put the fence up. I challenged them. They said they're sorry, they weren't going to do it. Then I said, okay, fine, I'm going to put it up. Well, we're not going to pay any of it. So I had all sorts of reasons for a lawsuit, but what do you do when it's your neighbor? Really. We needed the Planning Commission to protect us. We needed the City Council to protect us. And I talked to City Council members who said, I challenged it once, that cost me $1,800. Then I was going to challenge it again and bring it to the City Council. And I talked to one of the City Council members who said to me, Julia, you're not going to win, and you're going to be out another couple $1,000s. So there I was with 3 children and no husband, and I had to give up. So finally I said, okay, fine. The fence is going in, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it all on my property, and you have nothing more to say about it. And so that's the way I solved it. But I'll just say that things changed a lot, and I think it was really before 2011. I think it was 2009 when the policies in general changed. The laws, I don't think, changed, unless I'm incorrect. I could be, but I think the implementation of the laws changed after
Could
that
you
point.
sort of wrap it up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So in good growth San Carlos, I'm all in this county, and I'm all in San Carlos, but we do have to be really careful with what we're doing, and we want the goodness to stay in our city. And I'm appalled by the train station situation. That's so sad. Anyway, thank you very much for hearing me.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Don Bradley.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, councilmen, staff, fellow residents of San Carlos. I speak to you as an individual tonight, and my ideas are my own. I'm on the Planning Commission. It's my honor to be the chair this year, but these are my own thoughts. We've listened, spent 2 years now. We've listened to the SHAC, the consultants, the staff, the architects group, Good Growth, San Carlos, and the Planning Commission. Planning is complicated. It's controversial. It requires a lot of compensation on everyone's part. Compromise, the word I'm looking for. I believe that you can solve the problem of the McMansions and keep some people happy by simply approving the motions made, or something very similar to it, those made by the Planning Commission, by a 50% floor area ratio and a 50% lot coverage on a sliding scale, as we proposed, including 12 other conditions of our motion. We shouldn't have taken 2 whole years to do this, and listen that people want to keep doing it for another couple of years, I guess. Property owners have the legal rights to use and enjoy and change their property, dwellings, but the government can also set limits and the ability to act in reasonable limits, requirements for the public welfare and standards. I don't want to run out of time. I have a lot more, but I'll put it in print. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Kristen Viscia.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak once again. Let's see, I feel like at some point I've said maybe everything that I could say on this, but I did come up with, I tried to put a point on things. So we've all been working on this issue for 2 years now. Back in 2016, there was already, I think, strong consensus that homes were too big for their lots. We had a Shape San Carlos survey that indicated by 65 to 24% that people thought that was the case. I pulled down the data from the new survey that's being run today. Latest numbers are that 72% believe that homes are too big for the new homes are too big. 18.7% say no. So the ratio of people who feel that homes are oversized for their lots has gone from 2.4 to 1 up to nearly 4 to 1, 3.9 to 1. So I think people are holding those positions stronger now today than they were, I would suspect, because of what's new homes that have gone up in the city. Then is now residents raised issues with respect to house size that had to do with 2 overarching concerns, and that's the impact of home size. First, on the character and coherence of the city. What does it look like? What does it feel like when you walk down the street? How do we think about our city? Do we recognize it when it starts to become very oversized relative to lots? The other, and I think it's in some ways more important when you consider all the people that have stood up and talked about what it's meant to them when they've experienced an oversized home that's gone up immediately next door. They've spoken very personally and very passionately about loss of sunlight for yards, solar panels and people, decreased privacy, and loss of trees. So we've been at this, and I don't know if there's ever been an issue, perhaps you can let me know, ever been an issue where there's been as much study as this one. By my count, 4 city council meetings and counting, 6 planning commission meetings, 1 consultant contract and engagement for a year, a community workshop, postcards mailed to the entire city, 6 SHACS meetings, 4 meetings with local architects, 2 Shape San Carlos surveys, individual council member meetings with residents, hours of public comment, and untold number of letters. So the good news is that residents have engaged very thoroughly on this issue, and there's no question about there being inadequate public outreach. In fact, there were 4.5 hours of public comment at the 4 planning commission meetings alone. So at this point, I don't think it's possible to say that any resident who cares about this issue has not had ample opportunity to stand up and speak up about how they feel and what they want on this issue. And what we've heard is that residents time and again have expressed overwhelming support for reasonable house size limits across all lots in San Carlos. So some people have stood up and argued that because we have a different distribution of lots in San Carlos than other cities, that we should somehow allow different floor area ratios. So to that, I would say certainly these cities have significant percentage of small homes. They have still come up with different standards. And if a 60% FAR is not acceptable for a 6,000 square foot house, why is it acceptable, for a 6,000 square foot lot, why is it acceptable for a 4,000 square foot lot? Fundamentally, it's like a flat tax, it's a ratio, and the ratio tells us what is the relationship of the house to the lot it's on. So it's not something that needs to, it slides by virtue of the changing lot size. So for every home size that goes, new home, oversized home that goes up in the city, there are 2 to 3 neighbors who are directly affected and many, many more who are indirectly affected. And as we know, the change that occurs is permanent and it's irreversible. So to conclude, we're here tonight to ask you that when the time comes for you to cast a final vote on this issue, that you strongly consider what has been clear and sustained residents' call for reasonable house size limits in line with peer communities over the last 2 years. And we ask that the FAR that you implement solves the problems for neighborhoods caused by oversized homes in relation to their lots across all lot sizes. So thank you for your time, thank you for your consideration, and I hope you'll keep this in mind when time comes to put this issue to bed. Thank you.
Thank you. Vince Grish, I'm not sure if I have said that right.
Thank you. You got as close as most people do. So I'll establish my street cred right off the bat. I'm a San Carlos High grad, so been around for a bit. And not going to take you down a road of individual stories or things, but more about the process. So a fan of city government, a fan of dropping in occasionally, have only done that occasionally with this. I can say in the process, what I've observed is the Planning Commission opened this up to listen, to hear concerns, and incorporate the ideas of the public into the plan. Yet what I saw at the end is the same plan. After hearing at the meetings that I went to, as you've heard tonight, a universal cry that they want stronger, the people of San Carlos want stronger ordinances in this case. They want you to go to the smaller home. It's been unanimous. So if in fact you are true to what city government is supposed to be, the Planning Commission has not listened and changed. So I think it's up to you guys now to try and do that. So if your job is to defend, and that's what the commission has done, is every meeting they haven't listened, they've defended the plan. If your job is to defend the commission and the plan, then you'll go forward with it. If your job is, I think it is, to listen to the people of San Carlos, to represent them, then they've spoken, as you just heard, at 75% or more, that they want stronger FAR regulations. They want the ordinances to be as strong as possible, similar to cities like Redwood City and that. So please be true to the process of city government. And if you are, then there's no question of what this outcome will be. Thanks for your
comments. Scott, whoa. I didn't make a statement tonight, but I'll make it now. This isn't a football game. There's going to be people that may say some other things up here, and believe me, there's some people that up here may say things. So let's just keep it the way it's been. Really good. All right? Thank you. Scott Daniels.
Hi, I'm a 8-year resident of San Carlos and a 30-year Bay Area resident. I'm also a real estate developer and a builder and a real estate lender. I've been doing that for 30 years now, more than 30 years actually. Built almost 2 million square feet of space across the board, residential and commercial, majority of it in the Bay Area. Despite that, I'd like to see more responsible building. I think the early change to move, to free things up in San Carlos was too big of a move, and I've seen homes that I would consider to be large, even as a developer. So I'd like to see more responsible approach to that. That being said, I think FAR's adjustments are an adequate first step. I'd like to not see the same broad pendulum swing repeated again that happened in the past. I'd like to see a stepwise approach to this. We're not going to make everybody happy, and we need to balance property owner rights with neighbors' rights. So specifically, I hope that you will reject any forms-based discussion that's gone on whatsoever. It's one of the silliest, least efficient approaches to planning I have ever seen in any city, and I've built in 8 states and hundreds of municipalities. It will cause all sorts of horrible issues. I have a 6,000 square foot lot with a 900 square foot house on it, and I have a beautiful 150-foot redwood tree in the back of it that I like to preserve. The only way I can get a family-sized house in my particular lot is to go up. And if my second story is full of hallways and odd shapes because of a form-based rule, I'll have no choice except to extend in the backyard farther and closer to this redwood tree. So I'm just one example. There are other people that are going to face similar difficult challenges. So the form-based solution is not a solution. Let's take a stepwise move, reduce FAR, and start getting neighbors to talk to neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jan McKim. Could you move that mic just a little lower, then we can hear you? Thank you.
I used to be taller, so.
I used to have hair. Then I got this job. But anyway, go ahead, please. Please start.
I attended the last meeting, and some of the ideas that were presented stand out in my mind as very important. And one of them was the need to incentivize one-story homes, that there isn't in the new zoning or the current zoning a way to incentivize a home because of the proposed setbacks, you know, and by reducing, I don't know all the terminology that you've been talking about, but I'll try to explain it in my own mind. If you reduce the setback, like for example in the back of the lot, then a person could add another 1 or 2 bedrooms, you know, depending on the lot size. I live down on Greenwood, and our lot size is about, between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. So, and we have no desire, you know, it's just me and my husband. We have no desire to, you know, add 2 more bedrooms. But 3 houses down, somebody, a builder, I don't even know if there's an owner yet, decided to build a McMansion. And this house is over 5,000 square feet on a little tiny lot. So, you know, it's just like these narrow hallways, you know, the space between the 2 houses. And it just encroaches on the neighbors. There's a 1-story house next to it, and it just shades, you know, this 1-story house has 2 gargantuan houses on either side. So I'm one of the people here who is concerned about this, upset about this. And whatever happened, you know, after the last meeting, I'm really curious to know if there was more discussion about how to incentivize one-story homes so that you don't have to go up and encroach on your neighbors' properties. Was there any more discussion on that?
There could be.
Stay tuned. What, till later tonight or next year? Or?
Not next year, tonight.
Tonight.
Go
Okay.
ahead, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Well,
You're over a little bit, but go ahead.
that really is encouraging because I think that that can resolve some of these issues that are really affecting so many people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Peter Hartzell.
Good evening, council members. Thank you very much. I'm actually, based on that last comment, I'm disappointed that we're not hearing the Collins-Olbert proposal so that the public comments can relate to that. I think we're rehashing things that we've been talking about for many months here. But with that being said, I think the progress that the Planning Commission made with the proposal was a big step forward from the form base, so thank you for that. I've spoken at 5 of these meetings and sent an email to each of you, so you've heard my main comments. But in summary, I think on the small end, even out the floor area ratio, don't make an exception. On the large end, I don't care so much about that, but I think it's also reasonable to have a ratio that's not going to the extreme. And I think the review process is critical, that we get a professional on the planning review, that we have neighbors' rights, and the public notice and posting is taken care of. And I'm disappointed that maybe tonight that's going to be addressed, but I'm disappointed that that seems to keep on getting kicked out in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Bonnie McClure.
Good evening, everybody. Make it easy. I am in favor of the review of what's been proposed by the Planning Commission. I know you want to get it over tonight, but you know, I think it's still kind of rushed. Everybody seems to feel that there's a large percentage of people that are wanting the smaller homes protected from having large two-story houses next to them. Unfortunately, the code for years in this town has never precluded a second story. And so to try to keep people from building a second story on a small lot is really hard, because young families have needs that maybe I'm 87. When we started out, we didn't have big houses, right? But they feel that they need these, they can afford them, and the square footage just isn't there on a small lot. You almost have to go up. And unfortunately, it does encroach on privacy, light, and the use of solar panels on a one-story house. But it's the right of the homeowner to build what they want, but within limits. And I think that you really should just cut down on the floor area ratio to the lot. That would be the very simplest way to do it. And I'm sorry, but that's simplifying. As you know, I spoke last time. I really approve of the one car instead of two. That's going to save, and that'll really save on the small lots. So those are my two things. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Please come up. Thanks. Mr. Cowan?
Good evening. So I'll try to make this brief this evening and additive, since Christian and I 2 weeks ago gave a 20-minute presentation related to the topic. So three additive items here. One is it was really good to see the lot distribution information. Took a quick photo of that. That was the first time that we've had a chance to see it. Menlo Park was only published as of Thursday in the packet. It clearly looks like Belmont's probably the closest if Mark ran an R-squared analysis in terms of goodness of fit from a lot distribution perspective of matching up with San Carlos. And looking at that, I mean, if you look at Belmont standards, as I'm sure you know, having studied the issue, they're at 53% FAR with a max of 3,500 square feet on maximum house size, which is not something that's been proposed in terms of a cap on maximum house size. So that seems like if we were going to look at a pure community, that would be the one to look at. The second comment is out of the 7 homes that were listed in the packet that drew the most attention, and granted it's a relatively small sample, those came in at a 55% median in terms of FAR and 56% on average in terms of the homes that drew the most attention. One of those was at 70. One of those was down as low as 37% FAR based on a larger 10,000 plus square foot lot. So overall, once again, the homes that are drawing a lot of attention on average sit in the mid-50s. And then finally, the last comment, I do agree that Chuck's presentation is very compelling as it relates to the real estate trends in San Carlos. I would also call your attention back to 2016, the survey that was conducted by the city as it relates to what residents thought as it relates to their home value appreciation, how concerned they were with it. I don't have the final numbers in front of me, but looking, the survey question was, are you concerned that limits to home sizes could impact your property value? 2/3 roughly of those surveyed, I think it was 68% in the final tally out of 180 sampled, said that they weren't. That was not their primary concern. Now granted, there was a 20% vocal minority that were very concerned in that as well. So we're not being totally dismissive of that, but I think the point is understanding that a lot of people are in their homes today, that's not a primary consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter?
Yeah, hi, my name's Scott Linke. I'd like to just make a few comments. So as we're getting to the end of this process, I think a little bit of a summary that Chris from Good Growth San Carlos, as he stated earlier, it's about 3 or 4 to 1. It seems like in these surveys around people that are looking to really limit the maximum house size compared to those that think it should be a more less regulated sizing. From what I've seen, I've attended quite a few of these meetings. It seems to be a little bit more at the Planning Commission, and builders tend to want higher FARs, and most of the homeowners that I hear speak want want smaller houses. I think it comes down to maybe perhaps it comes down to something that Upton Sinclair said. I'll change his quote just slightly, but it's difficult to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on not understanding it. And I hope that's not the case, but anyway, I hope when you guys are voting on this topic that you back the average citizen and you adopt the smaller FARs like our neighbor cities have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, please come forward.
Good evening. My name's Lisa Wellman. I am an owner of a residential design company here in San Carlos on Industrial. Been in business for about 10 years. I was hesitant to speak tonight because I have a project in the planning review process. So I've been sitting there thinking, do I want to speak or do I not want to speak? So finally I decided I would speak. Our designs are driven by clients' needs. The clients that we get today are requesting 4 bedrooms. They want either 3 bedrooms with an office or 4 full bedrooms. So our designs are driven by the young families of San Carlos and even some families that have older children that are planning for the future. Many of our clients would like the 4 bedrooms. They also are requesting accessory dwelling units. Most of our families, I would say 50% of our projects right now are interested in exploring ADUs, either separate, over a garage, or within the home. For aging grandparents that are coming to stay to live, for college students that are home or students that have graduated from college and are home and can't afford to rent here. So there's many uses for ADUs, and I think that's a huge topic that we need to consider as we go into looking at the new standards. My colleagues, you received a letter from Una this morning. She can't be here. We are in favor. There's a group of us that have been involved with the planning department throughout the last 18 months. We are definitely in favor of reducing the home size and looking at a max home size that's reasonable and that fits the needs of the growing population of San Carlos. We're in favor of the larger rear setbacks. We're in favor of a better review process. Anybody that's been through an RDRC meeting, it's very subjective. We get all kinds of, when we propose a project that's over 3,000 square feet, we notify neighbors within 150-foot radius. Oftentimes, out of those 25 to 30 packets, we get 1 or 2 neighbor comments. Oftentimes, they're positive comments. The last set went out. We had 2 positives, 2 negatives, pretty good ratios. The thing that's really interesting in the design process or in the RDRC process is meeting with your neighbors and negotiating changes based on what the neighbors, the immediate neighbors, how your project or your home impacts your neighbors, whether it's your window placement, your height of your building, and also your setbacks. And this new project we're doing, I've met with both sides of the neighbors and really designed our project so that the setbacks were maximized for the privacy, even though it's a very large lot, it's over 10,000 square feet. Our windows were changed based on the neighbors. We did 2 shade studies. We made changes. We did re-studies. We did window studies for the neighbors. So we really went out of our way to care for our neighbors because the homeowners, they're moving into this neighborhood. They want to be friends and be compatible with the neighbors. They don't want to come in and have everybody dislike them. So I think the design process is a really, really important thing that needs to be looked at the RDRC level.
Could you sort of wrap it up?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, sure. Come on up.
My name is Raymond DiMattei, and I've lived in San Carlos for 40 years. And the developer took a lot next to me and split it in 2 and put 2 mega mansions alongside of me. And they're 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. And, it's, about residences. We talk about the numbers and everything, but we forget about the living conditions. And the living conditions, I report, is because this house is on the sunny side of the afternoon sun, where I don't get it anymore. My house is colder. My house is now costing me more money for gas because the furnace, I put on the furnace now much earlier than I used to. And I'm the one whose wife moved away because she couldn't stand all the noise, and she doesn't want to move back because my house is cold. And she prefers to live down in San Jose where it's warmer. And I don't think she's going to come back because she sees all this construction going on. And the one thing I would think that there ought to be some sort of cap on the amount of construction going on, and the Planning Commission and the Planning Department don't listen to us. The Planning Department pretty much works hand in hand with the developers, and the Planning Commission listens to them and is more or less a rubber stamp. And I hope that you don't listen to them and listen to the residents who really live here. And we're not house flippers, we're not developers, we're not realtors, but we live here. And we bought in here because this town was meant for families and it was for small, we weren't big time owners. And I moved away from what was a very stacked and packed community of Daly City, where the lots were only 33 feet wide, and you had 5-foot spacings on each side. And I didn't want to live like that anymore. And I moved here so that I could, enjoy the conditions, rural type conditions we used to have here. And by the way, when they did take out those, when this house next door to me, a rancher, and replaced it with 2 mega mansions, they wiped out about 5 trees in the neighborhood. And it's now in our neighborhood, while we have ranchers, we have these 2 tall houses in the middle, and somebody referred to it as the Twin Towers, and that's what we have now. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you listen to the residents, because we do count and we do pay taxes, okay? And hope that it comes across to you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.